Hello, everybody. Welcome. Oh, that's me. That's nobody but me. Oh, let's share this out to Paula. I keep forgetting. Oh, Facebook. The two people that wanna. Okay. Just in case. Mm. Yeah. Nobody. And I'm here. Oh, that's right. I had to leave to send it out. Okay. Well, this section is called Hollywood is the Devil's Toilet. Chapter 14, The World According to... That's what it says. Aware I was feeling blue, following the Little House Sob Fest, Rob invited me to visit him in Montreal, where he was shooting the Hotel New Hampshire. I flew up, excited for the change of scenery and to hang out. I was a huge fan of the earlier film made from John Irving's sen, sa, sa, sen, sensational novel, The World According to Garp. I identified with Garp, who didn't know who his father was and was raised by a free-wheeling, strong-willed woman. I don't know if Rob knew it, but I had also read his Hotel New Hampshire script, as I did all his other scripts. I wanted to see what I was in for with the love scenes. Those were red flags. Oh boy. I liked New Hampshire. So did Rob. He was excited about working with director Tony Richardson, who virtually guaranteed the film would have the author's oddball sensibility. And the talented cast, led by Jodie Foster, Beau Bridges, Seth Green, who was the baby, and Nastaji Kinski. When I learned she was involved, I thought, uh-oh. I remembered Rob had drooled over her when we saw One from the Heart, and I had been the guys go cuckoo. Oh, that's the word, cuckoo? Cuckoo over her exotic, overtly sexual and very popular snake poster. Yeah, there's a part that in this book I think I missed. I don't know, but anyway, I'll let you know if we did miss it. Then I have to go find out where I missed it at. My radar. No, let's try that again. My radar was on high alert when I got to Montreal. Everyone was in the same hotel, and I thought it was a madcap, loony group of people. Everybody was sleeping with everybody else, who I deluded myself into believing was an angel. I was able to visit him on the set until it was time for him to do his scene with Nastasia. I do right. Nastasia. Then he didn't want me there. At first, I stayed in our hotel room, stewing in worrying and anxiety. Having never traveled by myself to a foreign country where I wasn't involved in a project, I was scared to go out alone. I also have a notoriously horrible sense of directions, as in no inner GPS. Bored out of my head, I decided a good thing to do would be to teach myself how to smoke. Oh my gosh. After all, everybody smoked. So I buckled down and made a concentrated effort to smoke in a way that looked particularly practiced and cool. What? I was such an asshole. Ooh, she swore. At night, Rob would come back to the hotel for dinner, and on the weekends, we would party like crazy with everyone else. We had such a good time that the 4 days I had planned to stay turned into 2 weeks. But he still wasn't allowing me on the set. I began to sense something's missing between us. All signs pointed to one reason, and I started to freak out about Nastasia in person. She was gorgeous. I could only imagine her effect on Rob. One night I got really ripped, and as the sun came up, I poured my heart onto one of Rob's castmates. I said, I don't want to go home. She asked why, and I opened my heart to her. It's Robin and Nastasia. I said, it's freaking me out. Don't let it, she said. I can't help it, I said. It's going to happen. No, it's not, she said again. How do you know, I asked. Because she said she... Oh, relieved. Went back to the suite, wrapped up my visit on a good note, despite my suspicions. Rob and I got along well that trip. Once I was back in LA, though, I began to have a hard time getting hold of Rob. He wouldn't be in the room when I would call, nor could the production office find him when I tried there. He would call me at his convenience, but then he skipped calling for a day or two. I knew what was going on. One night I called Rob's room after numerous rings. The whole operator came on the line and asked if I would like to leave a message. Frustrating, I asked her to ring his room again. Instead of saying, of course, she paused. She must have thought long and hard about what to do, because a moment later she sighed again. Miss Gilbert, shall I ring Miss Kinsey's room? Excuse me, I said. Mr. Lowe, she said hesitatingly. Just ask from Miss Kinsey's room. Oh. Would you still like me to put you through? I declined her offer and instead booked a flight to Montreal the next day so I could see for myself what was going on. I didn't tell Rob I was going to walk into a catastrophe or something else. I had no idea. I let the hotel know in advance that I was coming and asked them not to mention it to Rob. I arrived before he finished work. The hotel let me put my stuff in his room, and I went downstairs to surprise him in the lobby. I was by the entrance when I heard, oh, Ray, hold on. Hey, yeah, you're first and only. I gotta look up a word, because if I don't look it up, I won't know what the heck I'm doing. Okay. RAU. COUS. Huh? How do you pronounce it? Sorry, guys. I have to know what this word is, how to pronounce it, because to tell you the truth, I never seen it before. It, nowhere I look, they have, how do you, Ruckus? Ruckus. Ruckus laughter and saw Paul McCain come through the door. Others from the film following him in, including Jody and her Yale roommate John Hutzman, who was working on the movie. The Rob and Nastasia were talking to each other. Though it looked innocent enough, I knew it wasn't. Shaking like a nervous chihuahua, I called to him. Rob turned toward me, shocked by the sound of my voice. I saw the blood drain from his face, then his arms, and then his hands as he turned white. Mm-hmm. Now I know I think I missed a page in here. I had to, because that... A moment later, through his expressions changed. It was as if he flipped a switch inside himself, brightening. He yelled one of his pet names for me. Mouse, Bunny, Franchise, Baby Girl. I don't remember which one. And ran toward me, enveloping me in his arms. And pushing me into a corner where he smothered me with affection and at the same time hid me from view of his castmates. His power of self-control was impressive, but his act didn't work on me. We went up to his room and I confronted him. I know you... Wait. Yeah. I know you've been sleeping with Nastasia, I said. Rob denied it. I said it again. I know you have been sleeping with her. Again he denied. Finally I said, look, last night I called your room and there was no answer. The hotel room took pity on me and told me that you had just called down from Miss Kensky's room asking for a wake-up call. Rob was frozen. He stammered and stuttered like a tire spinning in the snow. Finally he said, what? What the fuck? No way. I don't get it. The hotel operator sold me out. What the hell would she do that? I walked up to Rob, put my finger in his face, and said very calmly and slowly, "You don't fuck with the." Oh. Melissa, give it to him. With that, I walked out of the room and went to the airport, where I sat for the next 12 hours waiting for my flight home. If I had felt beaten and humiliated before I left, I was in agony by the time I landed in LA. My friend Katie Franklin picked me up from the airport and drove me straight to Jack in the Box. Excuse me. I bought a chicken supreme sandwich, took it back to my house, and gnawed at it while sitting cross-legged on the floor. Mayonnaise and snot ran down the side of my face as I wailed. Why? Why did he do it? What's wrong with me? Why doesn't he love me? For days, I called Rob innocently and hung up as soon as I heard his voice. See, there is mistakes in this book. Oh, her room. Okay. I called her room too. It became even more painful once the tabloids got wind of the affair. A broken heart is such a wonderful thing to share with the world. I loved going to the grocery store and seeing my face on the cover tabloids just above a bright yellow banner that said dumped. I called Warren Beatty and asked what I should do. It was more like a plea. Tell me, what the hell am I going to do? He just said, oh, meaning Nasia. It's such a silly girl. What? This is not helpful, I said. What am I going to do? You don't understand. My whole world is completely falling apart. And all you can tell me, she's a silly girl? He was silent. So apparently, she's a silly girl, I continued. Now what? It will pass, he said. It will pass. But he said she loved her. That too will pass. You're not helping, I said. Unfortunately, articles typically communicate in riddles, packaged as mysteries, and Mr. Beatty was among them. What can I physically do right now to make this change? I asked. Nothing, he said. There's nothing you can do to change it. You're going to have to ride it out and wait till he comes home, and he will come home. If he doesn't, you move on. My friends who were my age in relationship morons like me had said pretty much the same thing. But it seemed different coming from Warren. I managed to stuff away the stalkerson side of my personality and try to maintain some dignity in a very painful situation. Oh, wait a minute. Nothing. I was more upset after speaking to Rob, who said he wanted to think things over by himself in Paris and then Munich, when he was done shooting, which I assume meant he was going to follow her and continue their love affair. But he changed his mind and came back to LA. By the time he arrived, I was mad. I had gone from crushed to perplexed to fucking pissed. He called and he said, no, he'd call and say he wanted to see me and talk. I'd tell him to go F himself. He called and pleaded. I said didn't want to see him. I told him that I hated him. I described how he had ruined my life, explained if this was the way it was going to be between us. I wasn't up to it. I didn't want to be that person who every time Rob went on location sat at home wondering who he was screwing. Eventually, he convinced me to let him come to see me. Once we were face to face, we talked and yelled and cried. He let me get everything out of my system, and then, like two comets collided, we kind of exploded in each other's arms. When all was said and done, after something like 14 or 15 talking, yes, I knew it, carrying on and laughing, we got very quiet. I looked at him as if he had turned into a puzzle I couldn't figure out. Can you just tell me why? I asked. I get that she's beautiful, but you've got to explain it to me. Rob thought about it. I saw him wanted to provide. It's like when you walk down the beach and see a beautiful shell in the sand, he says. You either pick it up and listen to it, or you walk by. I had to listen to the shell. My eyes open. That is the stupidest analogy ever. And I pronounced that word wrong. I said, we laughed our little asses off. Humor was our savior. With that, we were back together. Oh my God, Melissa. I sometimes felt self-conscious about not landing feature films, especially as our circle of friends widened, including Sean and Chris Penn, Tim Hutton, and Matt Dillon, among others, all of whom were rocketing to movie star status. Even Michael J. Fox, wow, who Rob dubbed the Money Fox. Oh my gosh. Was making the transition into the big screen. But my life was no less busy. I starred in the made-for-TV movie Family Secrets, a drama about 3 generations of women helping one another through problems. The cast featured Stephanie Powers and Maureen Stapleton. Again, I snuck Rob into a scene. This one where Steph in the grocery store as we walked past a cute guy in the produce section. I turned to check him out. It was Rob. Oh, I'm good, Johanna. Sorry, how are you? The movie was uneventful and uneventful, except for getting to know Maureen more than one of the most amazing actresses of all times. Mo was an amazing woman. She was a ballsy broad, and she was just the tonic my soul needed. A real dame. She had a tremendous appetite for life. She liked to drink and eat, and she didn't mince words. I would sit down with her before work as she sipped a Bloody Mary and listen to her tell stories about herself that were legendary even then. My eyes bulged as she recounted the ribald speech she gave at the rap party for Bye Bye Birdie, and we laughed together as she recalled seeing a critic she didn't like at a restaurant and setting the back of his blazer on fire with a cigarette lighter. That's funny. My favorite was the night Alan David took her out to dinner after cutting into her steak and seeing it was medium instead of well done. As she'd requested, she summoned the waiter. Take this back and tell the chef I said no. I said to piss on it. She said, excuse me, the waiter replied. Well, that's what they do when you send food back, she said. I just want him to know that I know he's going to piss on it. So tell him to piss on it. I discovered my own ballsy side when the production moved briefly to Chicago, where we shot a couple scenes. Rob had made class in Chicago, and he called ahead to his buddy John Cusack, who lived there, and asked him to show me around while I was there. He did, and we ended up having a little fling. Melissa! Which I kept from Rob. It was my own private screw you. Melissa! Only John and I ever knew about it. Of course he would know. He was very sweet and funny. Funny was a problem for me. Rob's sense of humor kept me going back to him as much as our physical attraction did. He was brilliantly funny. I think the public finally caught a glimpse of his sense of humor. Wayne's World. Oh my God. The Austin Powers movie. Wayne's World. Oh my God. And thank you for smoking. But I knew how funny he was. He is also a gifted mimic. Lots of actors do Christopher Walken, but Rob's Walken was dead on. His impersonation of him. We were very tight when he left for London to shoot Oxford Blues. Letters from him arrived by the bundle, and I joined him there for a couple of blissful, fun weeks. He had become close to Cassian Elwes, one of the movie's producers, as well as Cassian's brother, Carrie, who was acting in the movie. It also features Julian Sands and Amanda Pays, who freaked me out when I first saw her because of how similar she looked to Nastasia Kinski. Did you notice? I asked Rob. He nodded. Well, it's freaking me out, I said. Don't, he says. There's absolutely no reason. Believe me. You're right, I said. You already picked up that seashell, haven't you? London was London was a non-stop party. We drank and caroused our way through the city. I may have seen the sun rise too many times for my own good, but I felt secure and loved and in a really comfortable place. I seemed like Rob and I had been through a fire and came out much better for the pain. Back in LA, Hollywood enters its golden age, a time where everyone made movies that seemed to define our generation. With his laser-like focus, Cruise was already in a league of his own, and Sean Penn, Tim Hutton, and Matt Dillon were very serious actors, though he pursued his career with more levity. Rob was thrilled when he landed one of the leads in St. Elmo's Fire. That's a good movie. A coming-of-age film about a group of friends just out of college who are trying to figure out the rest of their lives. There was good buzz around the project, whose cast included Emilio Emilio, Emilio Estevez, Demi Moore, Ali Sheedy, Anna McCarthy, Winningham, and Judd Nelson. We met Judd Nelson. We met Judd a couple of. Oh, hold on. We met Judd a couple of years before New York, and I was sure he was going to be the next huge movie star. He was scary smart, brilliantly honest, and hilariously funny. However, my favorite person on the picture was its brilliant director, Schumacher. I don't know. A wonderfully talented and entertaining man who was beginning an accent that would make him one of Hollywood's most successful and beloved filmmakers. He adored and, more than that, understood Rob, who was preen in his movie wardrobe, the school jacket, the hoodie sweatshirt, and the ripped Henley t-shirt, as well as the high-top tennis shoes and mashed down socks, and check himself out like Dorian Gray as he practiced his saxophone. Joe referred to Rob affectionately as the shameless creature. I loved him for that brazenly honest and funny insight, because it was absolutely true. Rob was a shameless creature, whether he was admiring the highlights in the longish hair, or listening to seashells. He was a horny young man, as Tony Richardson once said. And he enjoyed the attention he got from girls who hounded him on the set at all hours. One day he was changing clothes in the dressing room with Emilio when, on a lark, he threw open the door and gave a full frontal flash to a crowd of delirious female admirers as he asked his wardrobe guy if he knew where his clothes were. Joel said they had to call the police to get the guy out of the trailer. Nevertheless, we were going through one of the best times in our relationship. Joel welcomed me onto the set, and Rob had no qualms about having me there, no matter what they were shooting. I watched the scene where Demi drives Rob home, makes a movie for her by dropping his keys, makes a move for her by dropping his keys in his sweatpants. They were shooting in an alley deep in Hollywood. Rob's trailer was parked next to a church, and above it was a neon sign that said, "Hollywood is the devil's toilet." I thought that was brilliant. It reminded me of the scene in Scarface when Tony Montana sees the sign on the side of the blimp that says, "The world is yours." At that moment, I felt the universe wink at me. Let me get a drink, guys. After those set visits, I went off and did Sylvester. Oh, yeah. Okay, remember when I told you I remember this one movie? Well, it's Sylvester, not the other one. It's Sylvester I remember. A coming-of-age story about a young Texas wrangler who tries to make a quick windfall on the back of her best Bronco at a 3-day eventing competition. It was considered a hot project. The director, Tim Hunter, had launched Matt Dillon's career in Tex, and the writer, Carol Sabisky, had done The Toy, Annie, and Honeysuckle Rose. Annie, really? Before getting the role, I auditioned numerous times during a nationwide search for the quintessential teen actress to play this scrappy, housebreaking Texan. I was thrilled when I got the part. It was my first featured film, and it finally put me in the same club as some of the guys in our crowd who occasionally thumbed their noses at me for being on TV. They weren't the only ones. From what I understand now, the producers, Ray Stark and Marty Giroux, but Tim Hunter was against hiring me in the lead role of the movie. I represented everything he didn't want. I got that message at our first meeting when he sat me down and said, "No, we have to change everything about you." What does that mean? I asked. It means you have to change everything about you. He reiterated your mannerism, your look, everything. As he explained it, everything included cutting off all my hair, which I anticipated. I wanted to get as deeply under the skin of this character, Charlie, rails back, as I could. Then he laid a big bomb on me. He said he wanted me to do as much of my own writing as possible. Meaning, I asked. I don't want the majority of your stunts to be done by a double, he said. We will have doubles on standby, but I don't want to use them if I can use you. I knew this director didn't like me. His opinion came through clearly, but I had grown up around wranglers and tough guys. Michael Landon being the toughest, I didn't let Tim get to me. I knew that pros sucked it up. I thought, pal, you're going to like me by the time this fucking thing is over. It says that word. It says the word F. The F word. As it turned out, I don't think he did. For months, I trained 6 hours a day, 5 days a week with Bunny Allen, a writing expert who worked the crap out of me. My arms quivered as I lifted the saddle over my head 25 times. But I needed to be in incredible shape. The horse Tim picked as Sylvester was over 17 hands high and towered over my 5-foot frame. She's only 5 foot. I looked like a pea on top of him. But determined bee. Yeah. Fungal. Hey Paula. It's okay, you can only watch the replay of the other 2 days. But a determined pea. By the time I left for the shoot, I had boy hair, a flat chest, and big biceps. My thighs were black and blue from that damn horse, and I had calluses on the inside of my knees and all over my hands. There wasn't an ounce of femininity. I can't pronounce nothing. This is why I don't read, okay? I cried to Rob, I'm a boy. He was sweet about it, though. It's okay, Bunny Mouse. He said, I think you look cute. I still love you. I lost whatever vanity was left once I got to Marfa, where I spent the next few months shooting Sylvester. Actually, we stayed in Alpine, Texas, where they were on street light in one motel. I got to stay in the motel owner's swanky apartment behind the front desk. I called it the Norman Bates Suite. I wanted Rob to come with and help settle me in because I knew it was going to be a rough shoot. I was right too. Unfortunately, he was learning to play hockey for his next movie, Young Blood, and then was off to Toronto. As soon as I arrived in Marfa, I started to butt heads with Tim Hunter, though. I was playing a Texan. He didn't want me to sound like a Texan. There are 5 delegates in the giant state of Texas, and he wouldn't let me have a hint of any of them. My sanity was saved by my leading guy, Michael Scroffling from 16 Candles, and my leading man, Richard Farnsworth, who was unflattable. He'd been around, nothing ruffled him, which was a good lesson for me. It seemed to me that I could never do enough to please Tom. Tim. It seemed to me that I could never do enough to please Tim. And on top of that, my horse hated me. As much as the director didn't want me in the movie, my horse wanted to be in it less. There were 8 different horses, 1 for bucking, 1 for jumping, 1 for falling, and so on. But the main one, which I rode most often, was a monster. He nearly killed me one day. I was supposed to ride him straight away from the camera into a field. Suddenly, he took the bit out of his mouth, stretched his neck out, and bolted for the trees at a full run with me on his back. Oh, I gotta take a break. Oh. There was nothing I could do. Behind him I could hear the head wrangler, Corky Randall, screaming, "Motherfucker! Someone get a horse!" But the horse wasn't able to catch up. From some remote corner of my brain, I remember the safety talk that Benita had given me. I dropped one rein, grabbed the other with both hands, and pulled the horse's nose into my knee. Suddenly, the crow hopped around and around. What? Oh, suddenly he crow hopped around and around. I stayed on him until he stopped, then jumped off and walked in a daze back to the crew. Grown men, seasoned cowboys, stared at me with their mouths agape. Hey, she's halfling. Farnsworth was the only one sort of grinning as if to say, "Atta girl, you can handle anything." In reality, he said, that's bullshit. It's bullshit. They made you ride that dumb animal. Everyone knows that horse is a dink. I walked into my trailer, sat on the sofa, and sobbed. My body was trembling. I remember watching my hand shake uncontrollably as I tried to drink water. Then there was a knock on the door. I opened it and saw Bunny holding Sylvester by the bridle. The horse was covered in sweat. She told me she punched him in the face as a couple. Whoa! Why would you punch a horse in the face? A couple times. Sylvester says sorry, he said. Looked, that horse straight in his big eyes, seemingly remorseful eyes, and said, "You better be sorry, you bastard, because I'm not going through that again." I got back on him and he tried his funny business 2 more times over the rest of the shoot. Once when I was riding with Farnsworth, and another time when we were doing dressage moves in an arena. Every day was hard and scary. We worked terribly long hours, but on the weekends we partied our brains out. Our caterer had access to a private jet, and he would fly in the best food from LA as well as the best cocaine. Still, the nights were extremely lonely. I rescued a kitten and named him Sylvester. That's so cute. He became my constant companion, and I'd have him for the next years. Oh, that is so sweet. Oh my God, my heart. He would ride to work on Richard's shoulders, curled up in a little ball. It was such a cute sight. This big old rough cowboy with a little kitten sleeping next to his ear. But the kitten wasn't enough company for me. With Rob in Toronto, I began an on-set romance with the Frank Capra the Third. FC, and there's a 3 next to it. I have no idea. Though it wasn't intentional, I got a taste of what Rob went through on the Hotel New Hampshire, and he got a taste of what I experienced. On the other hand, he would call and I wouldn't be in my room. Marfa is famous as the place where Giant was filmed. Giant. Hey, Arnie. I'm on page 161 if you're gonna follow along. Now, where was I? Okay. And for the Marfa lights, the unexplained burst of light that can be spotted off Route 67. They appear to bounce, they appear to bounce through the nighttime sky like giant glowing basketballs. Weekend parties were based around going to watch the ghost lights and getting obliterated. Rob sensed the distance I was putting between us as I spent time with Frank. He wrote me a letter from Toronto saying he didn't believe I was out on it looking at some stupid rock lights, and he warned that what I was doing was dangerous to us. Well, he didn't think it was dangerous to them when he was doing it. Even rereading his heartfelt words, hope you'll give me a chance, as I did often, didn't deter me? What? Deter? I was lonely, scared, and by myself, which was, I discovered, not a good place for me. I didn't do alone well. Performing the stunts, risking my safety, knowing the director disliked me, and just living every day on this edge got to me, and I spiraled downward quickly. I had no clue how needy I was. How I needed a man to fill me up. I still hadn't acknowledged in an emotional sense that my father was actually dead. Wow. As a result, if I found myself in a needy place, as I did in Marfa, I would climb into someone else's lap like a kitten craving attention. Affection. Then we moved locations to Lexington, and Rob was able to visit, which ended my fling with FC the Third. Wow, that's what I meant. I left as soon as filming ended and joined Rob in Toronto, where we argued and nitpicked at each other until he confronted me about my behavior in Mafia. Sobbing, I confessed, apologized, and begged his forgiveness. He also apologized for not having been able to me when I needed him, been available to me when I needed him. I repeat it sometimes because I don't understand it. So if I repeat it, I understand it. With the storm and on drag behind us, we fell into the cozy lockstep of lovers. I planned to stay for a week and ended up there a month. Before I returned to LA for post-production, the PR campaign kicked off when I became an actor to be honored with the star on the Hollywood Walk of Hello. Hey. For some reason with my hold on guys. For my iPad I couldn't connect to the camera out front. I don't know either.
Bill.
No, thank you.
Free utilities for the rest of your life.
Yay! You mean a Robert?
$378. It's electric is $161. But don't forget, it's probably because that AC unit.
Yeah.
Water 75. Sewer 95. It sounds like a lot, but it's another.
Okay, we'll get back to. Oh no, where was I? With the stern and drains behind us, we fell into the cozy loft step of lovers. I planned to stay for a week and ended up there a month. I returned to LA for post production. This PR campaign kicking off. Oh, I already read all this. Afterwards, I celebrated with my family and Rob at the Old Brown Derby restaurant, where we devoured their famous Cobb salad and grapefruit cakes. Sylvester opening considered coincided coin. I don't know. With the release of Rebecca's De Mornay's picture, The Slugger's Wife. So I crossed paths with her and Tom Cruise in different cities as we did a press junket across the country to help with PR. My mother and Uncle Ray hired up Hollywood publicist Warren Cohen, who soon therefore became the great love of my mother's life. Wait, what? Oh, Warren. Mother's life, and years later, my stepdad. Ironically, I missed walking the red carpet for my own premieres at the Equestrian Center because I was on the road during PR. My mother dressed my sister Sarah in a full equestrian outfit for the event, including jobbers. Jod. I don't know. Is what kind of word is that? Jod. I don't know. An outfit, boots, vest, and helmet, and later showed me photos of her and worn with various stars who'd attended. Openings in other cities were planned, but they were canceled one by one as the reviews came in. Despite all the publicity efforts, I started to realize the movie was going to be a disaster, or as Rob and I used to say, a whistling, screaming bomb. And indeed, you could hear Sylvester dropping from the sky. Oh boy. And so it was. I wasn't particularly shattered. I didn't feel like my career was pinned on that one project. Aside from all the hard work that had gone into it, I was disappointed because I wanted to become able to say to Rob and the other guys whose movies were big hits that I was also in the club. I wanted to go. Me too. But I was realistic about my work. I had much more ego invested in my actual life. Jodhpurs. Now, what is a jodhpur? Is that like pants? Oh, I think I know what you. Oh, okay. Okay. Chapter 15. Andy wants to know if any famous people are here. I would stand up and say, no, just me, Melissa Gilbert. No. The tabloids only focus on breakups and bad news, so they were nowhere to be found when I took my mother on her first trip to Europe. It was their loss. They missed a good story. And are mostly friends of my mother's who were on a buy-in trip for their clothes store. with stops in London, Paris, Milan, Rome, Florence, and Venice. Even though she wasn't paying the bill, my mom insisted on sharing a room with me to save money. She also prohibited me from calling home. Again, it was the cost. As a result, I spent a lot of time talking to Rob from house phones in hotel lobbies. In Paris, my mother and I were walking up the Champs Elysees when I spied Jodie Foster on a movie set. I said hello and she invited me to hang out with her that night at her flat. We'll do something, she says. After a week of non-stop togetherness with my mother and her friends, whom we nicknamed Stinko and Poo Poo Foot, at every restaurant she ordered a veal dish called Stinko, and she kept stepping on poop. Well, now she's an adult, so she can do what she wants. But she did not want Melissa to overpay stuff. She wanted to save money because she gets half of everything Melissa earns. I accepted immediately and with a sense of relief bordering on I could have easily scared Jody into reconsidering her offer. Fortunately, she didn't. Jody and I had a delicious dinner at a neighborhood cafe, then hung out at her place. I spent the night there after we realized it had gotten very late. When I went back to the hotel the next morning, I saw my mother waiting for me with a concerned expression on her face. Uh-oh. What is it? I asked. Melissa, I have to ask you something. She said yes. Are you a lesbian? I scrunched up my face, puzzling by her query. No. I said, why do you suddenly think I'm a lesbian? Well, you know that they say about Jody. Ma, she's a friend of mine, I said. And I don't care what she is. That's really immaterial. Immaterial. She's a wonderful person. I was just wondering, she said. I spent the night at her house. Big deal. That doesn't make me a lesbian. I'm a very heterosexual woman. What? In fact, maybe too heterosexual. Our laughter was short-lived, not to sound like a spoiled brat, but I was nearly out of my mind. By the time we got to Venice, aside from craving my own space and conversation with friends my own age, I couldn't smoke around my mother, and it was driving me crazy. I was 41 when I finally gave up cigarettes. Good girl. And in all the time, I never once lit up around. Wow. Hey, Kenneth, how are you? At any rate, little Miss can't do anything on her own, decided to leave a few days early. I scalped my luggage and all the crap I bought across Europe and found my way from our hotel through the canals into the airport and caught a flight to New York, where I fell into Rob's arms and spent the next 3 weeks as a raving heterosexual. When I got home, my mom told me about a cute girl she had met at one firm, Roger and Cohen. She was Robert Wagner's daughter, Katie. My mom thought we would make good friends, knowing I didn't have many close girlfriends. She suggested I give I I scoffed off her recommendation just because it came from her. At almost 21 years old, I didn't want my mother picking my friends or making play dates for me. A few days later, though, I found myself with tickets to a Genesis concert and no one to go with me. Rob was out of town. Emilio didn't want to go because Peter Gabriel had left the band, and Emilio insisted that Genesis wasn't Genesis without Peter. Rob's brother Chad, my backup date, was busy. I thought, what the hell am I? Called Roger and Cohen and got Katie on the phone. I don't know you. You don't know me, I said. But I have great seats for a Genesis concert tonight. I also have a limo. Want to go? She said yes, and from that moment forward, we were joined at the hip. We were the same astrological sign, Taurus, born with 3 days apart. She shopped the way I did, with gusto and power. We favored Fred Segal in the boutiques on Sunset Boulevard, where her mom had a store. We would go to New York for 3-day shopping sprees at the B stores, Barney, Bendel's, and Bergdorf's. Best of all, she didn't go gaga over Rob, as had some previous girlfriends. She was unfazed by him. I adored her father. Oh yeah, I know who he is. Her father, an amazed man, exactly the way you would think he would be. At her house, we would come in late from a night of partying, find her in the kitchen, and sit with him till 4 in the morning as he told the most mesmerizing stories about everyone in Hollywood. This was 20 years before he had published his own memoir, and the stories about his affair with Barbara Stanwyck and his life with Natalie Wood, as well as Katie's mom, was still private and precious. By the time I met Katie, I had figured out LA's late night scene and knew the hot restaurants, clubs, and exclusive haunts. Celebrity was the best ticket in town. Where I was with Rob or Katie, were out together. The door at the private back entrance of any club would open, and we would be ushered directly into the VIP area or the VVIP area if they had one. Air kisses and drinks followed. Well, she picked a good friend for her. They're actually good friends to this very day, I think. That's what childhood actors have to go through. And look at Shirley Temple, the poor woman. She was forced to do all that, Shirley Temple. She didn't want to do all that. She's not an actor these days. She does something else, I can't remember. Or she's gone. She might be gone. But okay, let's get going. On Friday nights we went to Helena's, a diner club in industrial. Oh my God, I'm hiccuping. On Friday nights we went to Helena's, a dinner club in an industrial part of Silver Lake that stood out only for the Rolls Royce, Ferraris, and Mercedes in front. There wasn't any sign. You had to know where it was, and then to get in, you had to know its owner. Hella's Callian. Robert Wagner was. Oh, yeah, I know. Yep. But they can't improve nothing, though, I don't think. Helena Callian Yotes, a former belly dancer turned actress who opened the as a hangout for her famous friends. On opening, Jack Nicholson gave Angelica Houston a baby infant. Goldie Hawn turned 40 there. Sean Penn and Madonna used it as a haven from paparazzi. Beatty held court as a favorite table, so did Michael Douglas. It was quite a pickup joint. Then Helena started poetry night, which was hilarious. Allie and read poetry. I never had the balls to try it. One night I was at Spago for dinner with Rob, Andrew McCarthy, and Rob's agent. Michael Black, one of the most viciously funny men in Hollywood, and one of my favorite people. At the time, Wolfgang Puck's Gourmet Pizzeria on the Sunset Strip was Hollywood's nighttime commissary. Being there was like an A-list party with surprise guests. Indeed, as Wolfgang brought over special appetizer pizza, I heard someone scream, "Michael!" Michael. I was kind of amazed how the familiar voice pierced the depth from all the way across the restaurant. I saw Liza Minnelli flying over to our table. She kissed Michael, sat down between Andrew and me, ordered a Greyhound, and stepped into our little party as if she'd been there from the start. I could see her doing that. Whoa. Lucky girl. Then Michael Jackson walked in. He came straight to our table and sat down just as dinner was served. Wolfgang kept sending over food and everyone talked, except for Michael Jackson. Other than his kiss with Liza, he didn't say a word. Nothing. We finished dinner and were nearly through dessert when we began talking about what to do next and where we should go. Ideas were tossed around, all the options were nixed, and everyone ran out of ideas at the same time. The table felt silent, and that's when Michael finally spoke the only words he would say the entire evening. "You can come to my house," he said. "I got a llama." The already strange evening got stranger when Liza suggested going to Sammy's. I thought she was talking about a club I'd never heard of. She laughed at me. "You're so silly," she said, and explained she meant Sam Davis Jr.'s house.
Might need a carrot.
What?
We might need a new carrot.
Oh, no.
Nothing comes out.
Uh-oh. Oh, yesterday when I asked for medium size, I got a full size. Hold on. Andrew, Michael, Black, Rob, Liza, and I bid goodbye to Michael a month ago and caravaned to Sammy's house in Beverly Hills, where I learned Sammy was friends with my grandfather. Surprise, surprise. And see a wigless Liza. The woman had 6 hairs on her head. Melissa Gilbert, you don't say things like that. I hope everything's okay, Arnie. Eventually, we ended the night at Michael Black's apartment, where suddenly Andrew and Eliza started making out. Oh boy.
Yep.
Yeah?
Comes out.
You killed it.
You did.
No, I'm not the one that
Hey, it's not like I'm the one that dropped it and made it bounce on the floor.
bounced. Oh well, this just means we can get a better one.
Yeah.
Now where was I? Stop interrupting me. Where suddenly Andrew and Liza started making out. That was it for me. I said to Rob, what is Android, our nickname for him, doing? Rob said he didn't have a clue, but agreed with me that it was definitely time for us to get the heck out of there. So we said our goodbyes and drove home, laughing uncontrollably as we reached the crazy events of the evening. Is that Andrew McCarthy made out with Liza Minnelli? I didn't know about it until now either. She's completely bald. Life was terribly fun. It was still basically pre-AIDS back when it was only just whispered about as that gay cancer. And things were still fairly wild and permissive. We were in the midst of the Reagan era, and those of us earning good paychecks were not being overly taxed in any way, shape, or form. So people had oodles of money to toss around. There was a sense that all of us were at one of the great parties in human history. It is important to note that around this time, my brother Jonathan completely cut himself off from the family. He turned 18 and simply disappeared. Though he would turn up a couple of times over several years, I have only seen him 3 times in the last 2 decades. Surprisingly, I'm at peace with it. Though my heart does ache for my mother. That's so sad. I will look later on what it means to let go of a son. Yeah. That's sad that Jonathan did that. Maybe something was going on with the family and him. And he can't talk about it. Something must have went on. People just don't get up and leave. If I was his friend, I'll sit down and... Okay. He just got my message about, you know the chains you pull to turn on the light on the ceiling fan? Well, mine is so short, I had to jump up the other night. But last night, I could not reach it. Okay. Rob and I wanted to work together. After years of looking for a project, we thought we found it when, in September 1985, he was cast in About Last Night, and I was asked to do a scene test with him. Ed Zwick, who was this dark, humored relationship story based on a David Mamet play Sexual Perversity in Chicago, set up the test in New York. Though I heard the test was strong, Demi Moore got the job. Ed was honest and straightforward with me about his decision. Casting is casting, he said. And the studio wants what the studio wants. And beyond all that, just look at the two of them. Even you have to admit they looked good together. I gotta admit, they did. Rob soothed my sore feelings by taking me to see Bruce Springsteen, who was on the last leg of his monumental Born in the USA tour. And then he went off to Chicago to make about last night. I visited a couple times before starting my next project, the TV movie Choices. Oh boy, that was a movie. That was a movie. With Choices. Wait a minute. I have to think about. I'm thinking about the movie Ines McKean was in. That was not her. Choices. Which explored the issues surrounding abortion. Oh, okay. I got that movie actually. I have Choices. The picture shot in Montreal with Jacqueline Bisset and George C. Scott, who was every bit of intimidating. For Ferocious? I don't know. What is that? Ferocious. Opinionated, unbelievably talented George C. of Legend. For whatever reason, though, we took a shine to each other instantly. Somehow he would know when I was walking by his trailer. He would lean out of the come here. The first time that happened, I entered tentatively. Hi, what's up? Have a drink with me, he said. George, it's the middle of the day, I said. You're working, so am I. Oh, what's wrong with you? You pussy, he said. Have a drink with me. Oh, wow. I hesitated for a minute and then thought to myself, how many times in my life is the opportunity going to present itself? He poured a couple of Bloody Marys, and from then on, that became our thing. He was hilarious and apparently very thirsty. George was a completely no nonsense guy. He didn't like all the pretty bullshit that was often put off the acting scene. And I think we hit it off because he saw the same no bullshit attitude in me. One day, we were covering a scene with Jackie, who was a lovely woman and ungodly beautiful. As much as I struggled with my own looks, it dawned on me that being so beautiful must be a huge what? Mind fuck. You know that inevitably it will go away. And if that's all you're known for, you're screwed. Jackie didn't fall into that one dimensional category, but she took extra extraspecial. I don't. Extraspecial P. Shield. This is how I was told to sound words out. I was never told by my parents, sound it out. I don't know what that says. Extras, so I don't know. I have no idea. Care when it came to her. I at the tip of my tongue. When it came to her looks, as she got ready for this scene, she had someone behind her with a mirror and someone in front of her with a mirror, so she could check her hair from all angles. She had her own stylist too. George and I were off camera watching and waiting as she brushed her hair. Suddenly, my ear, and in a gravely voice I can still hear today, he said, "If I ever hear that, you're standing on some film setting with a bunch of mirrors around your head, and will come there and I will fuck you up." "Really, Mr. Scott?" I asked. "Yes, I will," he replied. "I promise." "Then I guaranteed I will never ever do that," I said. "Good," he laughed. "Well, no. We'll drink to that later." George played my father, a retired judge, who objected when my character got pregnant and wanted to abortion. Then, in an unexpected twist, he had to decide whether he wanted to be a father again at his age when his wife Jackie announced she, too, was carrying a child. The movie was actually pretty controversial for its time. Our most dramatic scene was when I told him that I wanted to terminate my pregnancy. He was supposed to roar, "No abortion!" And then we were to have a heated father-daughter argument. We rehearsed it several times, trying to keep something in reserves for the close-ups. Then we shot the master, and after I delivered the big news, George turned to me, crossed his arms, and stepped forward so that he was looking down his nose at me. He gazed was an intense fire ready to explode in my face. But rather than yell, as I expected him to do, he harnessed that rage and passion and instead calmly and slowly said, "No abortions." I don't believe in abortions either. I do not believe in that. It was meant to happen. It was like getting bitch slapped across the face by George. Startled. I, I forgot everything I was supposed to say. After a long pause, he asked, "Are you going to say your line?" I shook my head. "No. I can't do it." "You patent me," I said in a meek, embarrassed voice. I was relieved when he laughed. I assumed I wasn't the first actor who'd been handcuffed by his prodigious talent. Looking back, I realized there was often someone on the project who was sort of father figure to me. Whether it was Mike, Dick, Farnsworth, or George. And I loved hearing George call me kid. Later, whenever our paths would cross, or if he saw my mom, he'd ask, "How's the kid?" "What's going on with the kid?" That's cool. In turn, I was able to boast to Rob and the guys that you haven't lived until you've gotten absolutely plowed with George S. Scott. I'm sorry, George C. Scott. I don't know my letters yet. Something none of them, despite their movie star stature, could say. I also told another story that wouldn't have. At the end of choices, we went to New York City to shoot some exterior scene. One night I took a few people from the crew out to a club, either Limelight or Area, and I was in the VVIP area when Andy Warhol sided up to me. He looked straight at me. I'd been in close proximity to him at various clubs over the years. Oh. He knew full well who I was as soon as I smiled at him, though he took a few steps back and whispered in my ear of a petty man who was part of his little entourage, or whatever. The guy stepped forward and whispered in my ear, Andy wants to know if there are any famous people here tonight. I turned toward this well-dressed little homunculus aghast at the insult he just delivered with the blithe ignorance. Tell Andy to eat my shorts, I said. Oh, the guy seemed stunned. Okay, I said. You don't have to tell me. Wait, you don't have to tell him to eat my shorts. He smiled, relieved. Just tell him to fuck off, I said. Suffered another kind of crisis when I got back home. Uh-oh. I bet her mother found out. Trouble. Sorry. Arnie, what's wrong? Only to find Rob wanted to break up. Oh! Wait, what? Only to find Rob wanted to break up. It was a new year, and after finishing about last night, he wanted to see other people. Breaking in invitable. I can't remember the word. Despite getting along, a separate project had caused us to spend too much time together. I cried and wondered how I was going to get through it. I'm at nearly 22. I resigned myself to life with my cats and my beagle, Sydney, the only living creatures who understood me. Melissa, I understand you. But I had people around who pulled me out of bed, picked me up, got me dressed, and dragged me out, especially Katie. She was the one who kept me on life support when I wanted to pull the plug. She responded with pithy answers when I cried, what am I going to do now? She ignored me when I wailed that I was never going to get through this heartache. She kept me out of the house and social when I argued with her and everyone else that my life was over and I was better off spending the rest of my life under the covers in sweats and a t-shirt. When she promised that if I got my ass out of bed and got dressed, a new door would open. Yes. But the thing is, something happens with Melissa Gilbert and Rob Lowe. That I could have sworn in this book she said that she actually got pregnant when she was still on Little House, and she says for a while she was wondering how she was gonna, tell people and all this stuff. But she lost the baby. It's like within weeks. She lost 2 weeks into it, or whatever. And she goes. She guess Mother Nature went the right course or something. Did the right decision. I don't know. I could be wrong. Yeah. So she doesn't have no kids yet at this point. When she does have a first child, she gets boobs. Her boobs was like probably too small for an A cup. Man, I wish my boobs were that little. I'm telling you. No, not really. My body type right now. What time is that? Yeah, I can do a third chapter. Wait, chapter 16. Wait a minute. Who's this princess in this love story? Hmm. In May 1986, NBC celebrated its 65th anniversary with the Black Tie Photo Session, for which they gathered together the stars of its biggest shows from past and present. I took my sister, who enjoyed seeing all the stars. Numerous people said they couldn't believe that I'd finally grow up. But Don Johnson, wow, wasn't among them. The Miami Vice star hit on me the whole afternoon. Oh boy. No, not that I minded being the object of his attention. When the room was particularly overflowing with beautiful women in grown cut much lower than mine, it was exciting, but I also knew nothing was going to come out of it, because if anyone in the world was dangerous to women with very little knowledge about Don and even less experience, I knew guys like him were unhealthy for women wanting to preserve their wits insanity. I was in my dressing room with Sarah after the shoot when Don Johnson banged through the door, pushed me aside the wall, and planted a kiss on my mouth. Not a polite goodbye. Nice to meet you kiss. It was the kind of kiss you felt in your toes. It lasted long enough that I had time to look at Sarah with one eye and see her mouth hanging. Poor Sarah. Poor Sarah. Her mouth open. Don finally stepped back and looked me directly in the eye with a punkish half smile on his face. I'm going to call you, he said. Then he left. I exhaled as if I had been holding my breath for 2 days. The whole thing freaked me out at the time. At the same time, I had to admit that more than my curiosity was amused. Then he called and invited me to dinner with a group of his friends. I put myself together for the evening and arrived at Sonny Bono's restaurant on Melrose. Not sure what to expect. Hey, Callie, how are you? Hold on, where was I? Not sure what to expect, but promising myself I would do nothing more daring than order dessert. Don seated me next to him at a large round table, and things were fine until Banville, Patty D. R. Banville walked in amid a trail of spinning heads. Arnie, are you okay? Phone driving me crazy. Scam calls. Oh. They had been in a long relationship and had a son together. Though I didn't know if they were still together, married, or what. All I knew was that she was one of those unattainable, glamorous women. A total knockout, way beyond my league, in one tough thing. Once she sat down, I felt like I was intruding on something, and the rest of the night seemed awkward. It did help that I felt like I was a child who mistakenly got seated at the grown up table. For a couple weeks after, I fielded calls from Don, who wanted me to visit him in Miami. He showed tenderest persistence. I considered going, but ultimately I chose to preserve my own well-being. Yeah, that would be good to go. He would have done something. Instead, I hooked up with a different Hollywood bad boy, Billy Idol, who I met one night at Tramps when Katie and I were seated at the bar. No, at the table in the VIP section. My first thought was, wow, he's gorgeous. We started out shouting at each other over the loud music pulsing through the club. Then I moved to his end of the table. As I settled in, I thought if Don Johnson was a bad idea, it was beyond crazy. However, as we talked, he impressed me as sweet, gentle, and soft-spoken charmer. He wanted to know all about Michael Landon, and he asked what it was like to grow up on television. At the end of the night, we exchanged numbers, and a few days later, he called and asked me out. We went on several dates. Whoa! Oh, yeah. Wow, that's cool. We went on several dates, and of course, the second we showed up any place, we were met by paparazzi. Oh my gosh. The tabloids had a field day trying to figure us out. In the public eye, we were the ultimate odd couple, though not to my mom, who liked Billy a lot. Then again, she really had no idea what I was up to at the time. She even called me Priscilla, likening us to the pairing of bad boy Elvis and his oh so sweet wife. I never had any doubt it was more an adventure than a long time arrangement. When he returned to town after a big trip abroad, he threw a party in his suite at the Bel Air Hotel and saw serious drug use and people out of control. I stayed until the following afternoon, but afterwards I was bothered by the glimpse of darkness I saw that night. The turning point was when Billy took me to Rick's James' house, which was the scariest place I ever been. I felt bad vibes as soon as I walked in. 20 minutes later, I made him take me home. After that, I began to pull back from Billy. That I was even with him shocked the hell out of people, including myself. But I didn't want to get involved any further and then have to disentangle myself from something I sensed could turn ugly fast. Yes. I also grew wary of living too fast and loose. AIDS was making headlines as a fierce and mysterious killer, mostly of gay men, but no one really knew anything about the disease except there wasn't a cure. I came of age right before AIDS when people were obsessed for California cuisine, parachute pants, and partying. Excuse me. All night at clubs. Everyone shared Coke straws and glasses. People still hopped from bed to bed. No one talked about condoms or protective sex. They only The only time I heard anyone talk about losing their life from sex was when some guy half jokingly expressed concern about the possibility of picking up a psycho stalker who might slit his throat. At the time, Hollywood was indulgent and descendant, a non-stop uh, back channel where everyone was doing everything and everyone at once. But age changed that sense of wanton freedom in promiscuity. It reshaped the geography of our lives. Some needed more time before they realized this. For me, it was almost immediate. But then I was the one who went on the prowl for casual sex to fill empty hours despite my few flings. My search was for a relationship, a love that would last. Decascent. All right, thank you. But I know I missed something in this book, unless she talks about it later in this book. I think I might have skipped over a page or something. Oh, I'm not looking. I'm not willing to go back and look for the page. It was at the time I left the William Morris Agency and signed with Michael Black at ICM. Ordinarily, when an actor signs with a new agent, there's a meeting in the conference room where agents from all the various departments say that you are brilliant, explain that your previous agent had done everything wrong and promised to do everything different. Uncle Ray tried something different by hosting a cocktail party as a thing, different location, and made small talk with the guys from the different departments. Like the film guy who introduced himself and said he'd be sending scripts, and a theatrical guy who wondered if I had ever pictured myself doing Broadway, and the TV people who wanted to know how I felt about sitcoms and so on. Okay, so maybe that discussion happens later. I don't know. I thought it happened when she was on Little House on the Prairie and she was 17 when it happened. But who knows? I felt it was just a lot of yada 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 and listening to how fantastic I was, all of which put me on the verge of exploding from boredom and bullshit. I love it that the swears in here. Sorry, but I do. My mom scolded me for rolling my eyes. I couldn't help it. I wanted to be out with my friends, and I tried to think of an excuse to leave when the door opened. In walked the best looking man I have ever seen in my life. Rob! Rob was handsome. Michael Landon was good looking. My father was a good looking man too. But this guy was phenomenal. At first glance, he struck me as a more chiseled and more handsome blue-eyed version of the Doors lead singer Jim Morrison. He wore a suit as all the agents did, but I also noticed a braided rope bracelet around his wrist and revealed something more. I didn't know what more that could be, but it didn't stop me from feeling like his arrival has changed the entire room. He turned to say something to an agent he knew, in some 45 degrees into that turn he saw me. Oh, no. And I swear it was as if time stopped and the entire room disappeared, so that it was just the two of us there. I pulled myself away from his gaze long enough to lean close to my mother and say, "I'm in deep shit." "What do you mean?" she asked. "Look," I said. She turned and gasped. "Oh my God," she said. "I know. Have you ever in your life?" "Never," she said. "Neither have I." "What do I do?" "I don't even know who this is yet." "You'll figure it out." "I don't have time to figure out anything." He walked straight across the room, shook my hand, and introduced himself. I'm pretty sure I heard him say his name was Alan Greenpan. He could have said Jack the Ripper. I was done. Gone. We chatted briefly, then visited with people around the room for a few minutes until we met each other again on the other side of the room. "I'm really bored," I said. "How about you?" "Yeah, it's kind of silly, isn't it?" he said. Where are you going after this?" "No plans," I said. "I'm going to meet friends at the Hard Rock," he said. "Want to come?" "Can we leave now?" I said. I found out more about him over burgers that night. Born in upstate New York, Alan had studied business and played football at the University of San Diego. I almost said Santiago. Now he was rising through the film. Hold on, sorry. The film and TV ranks as the agency. We saw each other again the following weekend when he invited me to watch him play in the Hollywood Softball League at Balboa Park. Then he came back to my house for lunch and a relationship blossomed. It happened that I pinched myself whenever I thought about Alan. Not only was he breathtaking handsome, so kind, warm, generous, funny, easygoing guy. I lucked out. Then Then this lovely new romance was interrupted by inquiries from the tabloids. Oh, tabloids. They wanted to know my reaction to Rob's new girlfriend, Princess Stephanie of Monaco. Assuming that I must be heartbroken, there was another princess in my love story. They asked if I was okay. Rob and Stephanie had spent 10 days together early that September in Paris, apparently fallen instantly and madly in love, which shouldn't have shocked anyone since they were vital lookalikes. He had also recently told Joan Rivers, then subbing for Johnny Carson on The Tonight Show, that Stephanie was his fantasy woman. Stephanie had then reciprocated through the press. I instructed my publicist to say I had no comment, but truth to be told, I could not have cared less. I was for madly in love with Alan, who is not a creature. I was bothered, though, when Katie called me one day about Rob's royal romance had hit high gear, with tabloids reporting that he and exchanged rings and were already planning to wed. Not true. She wanted to throw a party for Rob and Stephanie, and she asked, "Is that okay with you?" That was the beginning of a distance between us. I was pissed. Here was my best friend, a girl I let myself trust, and she was suddenly swept up by the whole stardom thing as anyone else. In re- re- retrospect, I don't think our relationship would have taken such a hit if I said, "Dude, you are crazy." No, "Dude, are you crazy?" That's the most hurtful thing you ever said to me. But I wasn't mature enough to tell her how I felt. Instead, I said, "Do whatever you want, of course." I didn't want her to do anything. My image. In the meantime, I made the movie Blood Vows. Oh, this is the one movie I did not like her being in. Story of a mafia wife, and then agreed to a small role in the movie of the week, penalty phrase. After its director, Tony Richardson, called and asked if I'd sign on to play opposite Peter Strauss, like Blood Vows. It was an older, no, it was an other step in the direction of more adult roles. I agreed and flew to Oregon. Oregon. The producers put me in the beautiful little Victorian home out in the country in May. Day by day routine was pretty relaxing because I didn't have to work every day. The downside was of that was I had too much time on my hands and I got bored and lonely. Alan came up to see me, but he couldn't stay long, and almost as soon as he arrived, I got upset as a prospect he would have to leave. Okay, I didn't really get upset. I worked him into a state as I capable of doing back then. Capable of doing back then. On the day he was scheduled to fly back to LA, went out to lunch. As we ate, I thought, if I can get really sick, I bet he'll stay with me. An hour later, I complained of an emergency room at St. Vincent Hospital. Emergency surgery for a severe bout of appendicitis. My white cell count was through the roof. Okay, here's where I'm going to say, be careful of what you wish. It was all very dramatic and scary as I went under the anesthesia, warned that I would feel pressure on my throat, able to ask why and hear him explain it was a nurse pressing on my throat to make sure I didn't choke on my own vomit since I'd recently eaten a cheeseburger. The next thing I knew, I was waking up, my appendix was gone, and Alan was at my side saying he'd stay an extra day. It was a large piece to pay for a small victory. After a few days in the hospital, I returned to in time for my big seduction scene with Peter. He stepped out of the shower to find me waiting for him wearing nothing but panties and an enormous bandage across my stomach. Not only did I feel sexy, not only did I feel sexy, I was scared to death to stand there with my boobies exposed to Peter in my panties wearing butt facing the camera. To get through it, I drew smiley faces on my bandage. They caught Peter off guard, and that tiny distraction took the edge off me. A few nights later, like an idiot, I went out with a couple of people from the crew, stayed out way too late, drank way too much. Within 48 hours, I was sicker than I'd first went into the hospital. Unable to sit up for more than a minute at a time, I managed to finish my last scene, and then I flew home. Somehow I survived the plane. Got to my house. I remembered Rob coming over, and the next thing I knew, Rob coming over? Since when was Rob coming over? Remember Rob coming over, and the next thing I knew, I was being driven straight to Cedars-Sinai Medical Center. Delirious from fever due to rampage case of strep, oh boy, that had invaded my entire body. I barely recognized Rob, who was very gallant in coming to my rescue, even though he was still seeing Stephanie. Once he knew I was okay, he went back to his other princess. Then Alan took care of me. I got a little confused there. 2 months later, he took me to Tahiti for a proper rest. It was fall, and I thought he had been deposited in paradise. He had a hut on the beach. We woke up at sunrise, went to bed at sunset, and in between we ate, snorkeled, made love, napped, rode horses, drank, and made love again. Oh, I like that idea. It was a perfect oh my god. It was a perfect place to decompress. A perfect place to be in love with a truly wonderful guy. Around the holidays, Rob called me from a Porsche dealer and said he needed my help. I had read the Princess Stephanie thing had imploded as it inevitable. How come I can't read? Inevitably was going to do. Eventually. And he was back in LA. You need my help? I asked. I'm buying a 928 and I'm scared shitless to sign the paperwork, he said. You have to help me. First of all, I haven't spoken to you in a long time, I said. And why do I have to help you? Why can't you do this? I'm begging you, he said. Please, Melissa. I never bought anything like this in my life. I understood. This was considerably different than the Mustang he had purchased when we were first together. His request was also completely absurd. So absurd that I sped over to the Porsche dealer and sat with him as he signed the papers. Afterwards, he needed to talk to me. Rob said he needed to talk to me. I knew what he wanted, what he was going to say, and I didn't want to have that discussion. But he pleaded with me to change my mind and eventually broke me down. He went up again later that day. I spent a few hours in between preparing my responses to all the apologies and entreaties I knew he was going to make. But it turned out Rob had more than forgiveness on his mind. He knew he'd been an asshole and admitted to breaking my heart far too many times. But he explained, just been through the most insane experience of his life. I'm sure you read about it. He said sheepishly. I said I had, looking like a man who just walked back into his life after being given up for dead in a far off land. He said, I'm back. I'm here. I'm me. I'm not sure if I read about that experience of him. What is that supposed to mean? I asked. I'm not going to live without you, he said. I swear to God, this time is different. Really? What makes a difference this time? Because this time, suddenly, he dropped to one knee. I want to Whoa. I want you to marry me. He caught me totally off guard and I froze. You what? I asked. I'm formally asking for your hand in marriage, he said. Will you marry me? I was at a complete loss. I stammered things like, well, hold on now. And I have to take care of a few things before I can give you an answer. I was totally thrown. I thought about Alan. I flashed on his family, whom I'd meet on a recent trip to New York. I made a lot of strange sounds. I grunted and moaned, but say yes or no. Finally, I said, Rob, it's just too much. Go away. Give me some time and I will give you an answer. I tried to. Yeah. So he roared off in his new Porsche, and I collapsed on my bed and twisted myself into a knot, a position I stayed in quite uncomfortably for the next few days. I felt like I was in a dream. I didn't know if I was coming or going. I didn't believe Rob had actually proposed, nor could I understand why. I even called him and said, I'm going to ask you this again. Are you seriously proposing marriage? Yes, he said. I mean, marriage. I said, yes. Within a year of asking me, you prepared to be married to me? Because I'm not going to be engaged for decades and decades. Right. You're prepared for this? Put the conditions on it you want. Put any conditions on it you want. You mean this? Yes, he said. Do you have an answer? Honestly, I still can't wrap my brain around this. I said, you have to give me more. Give me more time. Oh boy. If he's a good guy, give her all the time. That's why when I said he broke up with her, I went, what? Wait a minute, huh? Because I know. I actually watched his, I watched her biography as well, so. I really didn't know what the hell to do. In the meantime, I had a special man in my life who was calling me throughout this quandary and asking me to dinner and movies, asking me to hang out with him as we had been doing. And he could bring me soup or just sit with me. When I told him that I'd been lying low because I wasn't feeling good, each time I found myself inching toward calling Rob and answering, a voice in my head screaming at me, don't do it. You already have a wonderful guy. He's sweet. He adores you. You're going to break his heart and then you're going to be sorry. The last thing in the world I wanted was to break someone else's heart, especially Alan's. I knew too well the misery of heartbreak. The thought of possibly doing so was almost more than I could hear. I didn't eat or sleep. I talked to my cats. I asked my dog for advice. I looked heavenward for a sign from my dad. I also talked to my mother, repeatedly asked her the same questions each time. What should I do? She finally threw up her hands and said, It's up to you. Who's going to make you the happiest? That's true. She was right. I had to quit torturing myself and make a decision. I got out a piece of paper titled It. Pros and cons of marrying Rob Lowe and made a list. Okay, guys. What's the answer? Do you think she's going to say yes or no? I know the answer. Okay. I think we have time for one more chapter. 17. What fresh hell is this? Yep, chapter 17, yep. After a great deal of soul searching, the choice was clear. I had invested real time and effort into my relationship with Rob, and if he was telling the truth, I was in. Ha! I knew we were young, but I also knew he was the man with whom I wanted to spend the rest of my life with. He was the one I wanted all along. Before I gave Rob my decision, though, I needed to break the news to Alan. Oh, gosh. I wanted to be as grown up, as considerate as possible. Email messages didn't exist back then. I wouldn't have. I just heard a noise. What's wrong, Paula? I wouldn't have delivered the news in such a cold manner anyway. I wasn't going to do it over the phone or by letter either. Alan deserved better. He deserved to hear me explain in person why I was making this extremely painful decision. Oh my gosh. I'm almost sorry that I started this chapter. Oh boy. I went to his apartment praying it would go all night until, unlike Rob, who I'd seen cry and scream. Hey, he's an actor. This histrionics in drama. Alan was very even keeled and reserved. He wore his emotions as nearly and carefully as his neckties. I wanted to vomit, but it felt like I had a grip on my feelings as I told him that I had been forced to make a decision after Rob had suddenly come back. Alan's face was like stone, but I saw his eyes begin to melt as he uttered a scared and hesitant yes. Back to my life, I continued. Yes, he said. Yes. Before I could get into the details, no. No, I got it. Oh boy. Alan began to cry. He realized what was happening. I felt like Alexis Carrington, just a colossal bitch. I wanted to run home, crawl into bed, and instruct my mom to tell Alan I was breaking up with him. Tell Rob I would marry him and then set up the wedding so all I had to do was show up. No, you can't do that. I didn't want to be a grown up having this conversation, which quickly turned heartbreaking and sad and teary. Ah. There you go. You don't learn.
I have to do that when I look in the mirror too.
Oh, me too. Me too. What are you going to do? Alan asked. I told him, and he started to cry even harder. Then he pulled himself together and said he didn't know what to tell me other than he hoped I would be incredibly happy. That made me cry hard as all. I spent the night. Both of us wanted one last night together, but leaving the next morning was torture. I had to drag myself away from this wonderful guy and then what? Chastised myself the whole way home. I haven't, criticized. No. I knew I was behaving like an utter moron. At home, my answer machine was full of messages from Rob, unable to reach me. I called him back. He wanted to know if I made a decision. He said he was losing his mind. I told him that I loved him very much and I had a decision, but I needed a couple more days before I saw him. We finally got together. I was blunt after my reservations. I threw all the cliches at him, including the one about leopards not being able to change their spots. What? Melissa! Yeah, right? Alright, let's see what happens after this. But I'm convinced people can change. You see, these two people was madly in love with each other. So, but I'm convinced people can change. I said, and maybe you are willing to change. Maybe this is turning point. Maybe the fact that you have to cough up to put a shiny rock on my finger will add to the fact that we have this commitment. I don't know, but I'm not going to walk away. 6 years of my life. 6 years. That's right. They've been together a long time. I want to give this a chance. So, yes, I will marry you. After breaking the news to our families, our biggest challenge was picking out a ring without seeing or engaging splashes across the tabloids. Oh, gosh. This could be hard. We talked to a Beverly Hills jewelry store one day without attracting the attention of any paparazzi. I always loved jewelry, but I had no idea what the good stuff cost. The price tag shocked us. Not that I saw any rings I liked. All of them were too big or too gaudy, or both, and too expensive. They ranged in prices from $20,000 to $200,000. What? Ridiculous! But like most women, I was able to summon a reserve of stamina and stay with the hunt until I found the perfect ring for me. A dainty sparkler. Yeah, she is a dainty woman. Oh, Paula. I don't know. Disaster. I can't remember what. A dainty sparkler with 11 baguettes and 5 Marquise diamonds, all under a carat, shaped like a crown. Yes, there you go. And set in white gold. I showed it to Rob and tried it on. This is the one, I said. Is it? He said. I nodded. Yep, 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 yep. And I added the yups. I don't know how much it's going to be, he said. Well, ask, stupid. You sure you really like it? It's perfect. Based on what I've seen, he winced. This is going to hurt. Maybe, I said, grinning. The ring was priced at $2,500. Holy crap. Still a significant sum, but not anywhere near the hit anticipated. As we left the jewelry store, we were met by a group of property. Oh no. Who had been tipped off we were in sight picking out a ring. Amid the wear of snapping cameras and questions about our engagement, we hopped into Rob's Porsche and sped off to safety. Man, why couldn't she just get someone that was her size and had them go get a ring? Of course, there was no FaceTime or anything. Oh boy, suddenly and impulsively, Rob and I looked down Wright's stable. Tom and Rebecca had split and had Emilio and Demi. In fact, Emilio had fathered 2 children with Carrie Sally, with whom he had an off-again relationship. At a New Year thrown by Alana Stewart in the house she got in her divorce from Rod, I spotted Ryan O'Neal, Farrah Fawcett, and thought, well, they're a couple that made it. If they can do it, I think Rob and I can be okay. Thinking back to that moment of naive optimism reminds me, at least in tone, of the scene in Postcards from the Edge where Meryl Streep comes home and Shirley MacLaine is waiting up for her, drinking in pajamas with a turban on her head. They have, and Shirley says, you know, it could have been much worse. You could have had Joan Crawford or Lana Turner for a mother. And Merle says, what, those are the choices? Ryan and Farrah were our control couple. My North Star? What was I thinking? Okay, Kai, bye. Take care. Peer Rob, the next step was moving in with him. He wanted me to move from my mother's guest house into his mother's guest house. However, his was more than 14 feet away from the main house, and he had redone it in American Gigolo style. Bachelor pad chic featuring black liquor cabinet. Liquor? No, I know that word. I can't think of the word. Leather furniture, glass bricks, spins, and all-lucen electronics, and a splash of neon lights. By contrast, my place was done with funky, comfortable furniture, tending toward the style that would become now a shabby chic, with beautiful art. Oh, no view, accents. I also had 3 cats, Sylvester, Cheerio, and her son, Dr. Murray Schwartz, as well as my dog, Sydney Bigelman. Rob had a cat too. Obsidian named Bob Lowe. I didn't see how the hell my stuff was going to blend with Rob's, nor did I see we were going to share his closet, which already overflowed with designer clothes and wardrobes from his various movies. Also, he didn't have a doggy door for Sydney, but every time I raised a new obstacle or problem, Rob told me not to worry, that we'll figure it out. And we did. We worked out more than just difference. In one of our conversations, we divulged to each other that had been going on while we were apart. I told Rob that I'd been seeing someone very seriously, but had ended it for him. He told me about the craziest of his relationships with Stephanie after everything was finally purged. I said, so, let me ask you a question about you and Stephanie. He said, yes. He said, what is it like fucking yourself? You guys are clones. What is it like? He just smiled his adorable Rob smile. I could see his smiling. You noticed? Who didn't? I said. I mean, she's clearly not just other seashells, is she? After agreeing on the summer wedding date, Rob left for St. Augustine, Florida, where he began making illegally yours. And I turned my attention to actual wedding plans. I poured through bridal magazines looking for dresses and met with wedding planners, florists, and caterers to get ideas. Rob and I talked numerous times. He was more into the guest list, a monster task that began to resemble an award show seating chart that all its nuisance complications. One day he said if we were going to have Francis Ford Coppola, we needed to invite Oliver Stone too. I pointed out that we didn't know Oliver. Rob said, yeah, but we really should. There were many similarity, nutty conversations like, could we invite Debbie and still have Emilio? Could we invite my friend Liliani, the sister who had had a less serious thing with Emilio, but a thing nonetheless? Judd or his ex, Laurie? On and on ad nauseum. At one point, I felt like we had to invite everyone or no one because it seemed as if everyone in Hollywood, at least those we knew, had slept with one another, us included. It convinced me one day, way in the future, the industry will be run by one little banjo playing mogul with an exceptionally high forehead, little beady eyes, and webbed fingers. The quintessence, I don't know, product of celebrity inbreeding. In the meantime, Rob was having a great time in St. Augustine, hanging out with Colleen Camp and the crew, but he didn't completely get directed Peter Bogdanovich. During rehearsal, Rob called me perplexed. Peter had told him not to have orgasm during sex while he was shooting the movie. I said, what? Yes, he said you lose a lot of energy that way and it's a problem, so you can't let yourself come. You're not listening to him, are you? I asked. No, he said. But wait, I'm not there, so what does it matter? Haha. I visited a short time later and we had a nice time. Peter graciously opened his set to me anytime, and I did all the touristy things in St. Augustine. Then I flew back home and hung out with friends. I was really determined to be good. Both Rob and I had multiple flings in the past, but I was going to make sure my behavior was as changed and chaste as he said he was. No John Cusack moments for me. No temporary fixes. I was Susie Homemaker planning my wedding, and as far as I recall, Rob was rolling along nicely too. Till then, I had been partying heavily, but I turned over a new leaf after accompanying my friend Lauren to a 12-step meeting. A manicurist, Lauren was my primary connection. She also smoked bales of weed, and one day, feeling like her life was unmanageable, she decided to get sober. At her meeting, I introduced myself as a normie, but I left thinking my life would be infinitely better if I gave up drugs. Good girl. Not alcohol. I didn't consider that a drug, but it was. A beer or a cocktail was fine, but I felt like I was doing a lot of coke. I'd recently missed in an audition because I woken up after a too briefly sleep, looking like shit. That was enough of a reason for me. As I did with so many things, I got way too involved too fast. I went to meetings because a life raft of people who were sinking in their own lives. Put my name on phone list when out of no went out for lots of coffee and had people to my house. It was a nice network of people. They were all a little dark and fun. My life did become a little bit more peaceful too. I could focus on other people's drama instead of my own. It was temporary enough. After finishing Illegally Yours, Rob flew straight to New York and began production on his next picture, Masquerade. Oh. I visited at the beginning and I got a good vibe from director Bob Swain. And Rob had rented a lovely home in the Hamptons, and we had a great time there. During the day, we hung out at the beach and took funny videos of each other with the camera his parents had given him for Christmas. And at night, we hit the hot restaurants in the city. Charlie Sheen was also in town shooting Wall Street. One night, Charlie, Rob, and I were at a club with Oliver Stone, tucked away in a corner booth where the shadow fell a little heavier to afford more privacy, and the music wasn't quite as loud, so we could actually have conversation. Oliver was ranting about the terrible quality of television, going on about how the network put on nothing but crap, and in the process turning the culture into crap, and blah, blah, blah. At one point, I saw out of the corner of my eye a group of girls staring at us from across the club. They had to look in their eyes. The celebrity chaser photographers are called paparazzi. I'll call them the people who stare across the room, the recognizes. These ones were in their early 20s and attractive. I watched them work up their nerve and walk up to our table. I thought they were going to ask for Rob's autograph. Rob sort of sat up straighter, getting ready to sign. Shamelessly creature that he was, while Oliver went on with his diatribe, and Charlie listened, but the girls looked past both of them and directly at me. You're Melissa Gilbert, right? One of them asked. Yes, I said. Oh my God, one squealed. We've been watching Little House on the Prairie our whole lives, another one said. We even watched the reruns. Growing up, I wanted to be just like you, the third one chimed in. I dressed as you for Halloween. They excitedly recalled their favorite episode and told me more memories they had in loving the show. Everyone at the table got quiet. Oliver looked at me curiously. I don't think he had any clue who I was. Wow. The girls in turn didn't seem to be bowled over by Rob or Charlie or had no time for Oliver, nor did they care. After they left, I flashed Oliver a grin and said, and that is the power of television. I returned home feeling pretty damn good about life. I heaved a sigh of relief at the decision I made to marry Rob. I seemed he had clearly changed. With our wedding plans moving along, I celebrated my 22nd birthday with Katie Wagner and our Brad Wyman. Since all of us were Tauruses, we called it the bullshit party. I broke my vow to not do drugs that night and went on a 2-day bender in Las Vegas with a group of friends that included Leif Garrett flying home after not sleeping for 48 hours. I thought I saw the writing on the walls and it scared the shit out of me. After that binge, I vowed to never do cocaine again. Oh boy. She never did it in the first place. Rob asked me to come back to the Hamptons to be with him, and I couldn't get there fast enough. Of excess behind me, easy loving relationship realms of visiting Rob on the set. He bopped around the Hamptons and hung out at night. We couldn't have had a better time. After a couple weeks, I bid him goodbye and went home to continue wedding preparations. I looked for a dress, met with the wedding planner, and relaxed. With not sure why, but I felt run down, plain blah. I was maybe this is it. I was at our home in Malibu when I noticed my breasts were particularly tender. Then it hit me. Oh shit. My period. Filofax, sorry. And started counting days. It turned out I was about a week late. I bought a home pregnancy test. Oh boy. Then tossed and turned around the night, waiting for the morning when the instructions said to take the test at the first glimmer of sunlight. I leaped out of bed, ran to the bathroom, and took the test. It was positive I was pregnant. My heart raced and my hands shook uncontrollably. I laughed and cried at the same time. I didn't know what to think. So, everything. A baby. My baby. Mine and Rob's. Our child. Oh God, the wedding. We would have to move the wedding date up. No way was I walking down the aisle with with a bulging stomach and a train of whispers. What was Rob going to say? I tried to imagine his reaction. How would he be when I told him the news? Surely he would be happy, right? Mm. My mind wouldn't stop. I was going to be a mother. I was going to have a family of my own. I made an appointment with my OBGYN, who confirmed that I was pregnant, gave me a big hug, and sent me on my way with a handful of pamphlets and prenatal vitamins. Oh, my life was about to change in ways I couldn't begin to imagine. It was going to be exactly the way I had dreamed. I was beyond happy. I wanted to tell Rob the news in person, so left the next day from the Hamptons. I arrived and slipped con- contented, contentedly into his arms, thinking, "This is the man I love, the man I am going to marry, and I am about to tell a secret that will make our lives perfect." He held me and told me how happy he was that I had come back to be with him, how badly he had missed me. Oh boy. That was my cue. With my cheek pressed against his face, I whispered, "There's more. I'm pregnant." Silence. Crickets. I pulled back from him just enough to see his face. "Rob." He walked away from me and sat down on the patio chair across the room. Uh-oh. I forgot where I was. I sat in the chair across. I sat in the chair opposite him. Wait, hold on. He walked away from me and sat down on the patio chair across the room. I sat in the chair opposite him and said something along the lines of, "I know it's a lot and not something we plan, but we have to prepare. How difficult can it be? People have been having babies forever." I paddled up until I saw the look on his face change from shock to positively panic stricken. Uh-oh. You were right, Pat. Follow. More silence ensued. It was like I had stepped into the bottomless pit. I felt the terror of falling and nobody to catch me. Finally, Rob cleared his throat. With his voice trembling and tears in his eyes, he said softly, "I can't be a father." That little bastard. Oops, sorry. "What?" "I can't be a father," he said with a firm voice. Before I could respond, he said, "I can't be a husband." He had tears running down his face. "Melissa, I can't be a boyfriend right now either." "What does that mean?" I asked. "Don't understand." I stared at him. "You have to tell me exactly what you mean." Rob started to cry. "I'm sorry," he said. "I'm so sorry. I just can't do it. I can't do it. Any of it. It's over." "Over?" "I'm so sorry," he said. I walked over to him, put my arms around him, and we cried together. Both of us knew this time it was really over. Done. Finished. I wanted to go home, but it was too late for me to get back to JFK and catch a plane, and frankly, I just didn't have the strength. I stayed the night with him. I don't think I slept a minute. I watched Rob sleep while my mind replayed and analyzed what seemed like every moment of our relationship. Frustrated, I then stared into the darkness as if I might find a window through which I could see what would happen next. Rob was so lucky. Anytime things got rough, God bless him, he would go to sleep. I was as worked up as a supercomputer ablaze with blinking lights. He was fast asleep, curled up face, breathing rhythm, rhythm McCallie, and looking beautiful, content, peaceful, and blissfully unaware of what lays ahead. Well, no matter what, he was going to be a father. The next day was a blur. Before getting on the plane, I called home and rallied my girlfriends and my mother. They began the process of moving back into my mom's guest house. I was a walking zombie. Everyone helped me unpack. Periodically, my mother or one of my girlfriends would shove food in front of me and order me to eat, since I am that type of person who loses her appetite when going through any emotional upheaval. Melissa, on the same thing. None of them knew I was pregnant. Oh. After everyone left and I found myself alone, I began one of those great cries of my life. It was a full-on wailing, the kind of tear-filling purge that comes from deep inside. It was the kind that leaves you dehydrated, exhausted, and cleansed. When it was over, I began to deal with the most difficult decision I'd ever faced. What the hell was I going to do? The way I saw it, I had three choices: keep the baby and become a single mother at age 23, give the baby up for adoption, and get an abortion. Within the matter of complicated further by the press, somehow the tabloids had sniffed out our breakup. What the heck? Their reporters circled like vultures. Headline cropped up everywhere I turned. One said jilted, another screamed, left at the altar. Lovely. Whatever decision I made about this pregnancy, it could maybe be kept private if I choose option 3. No, don't choose option 3. Otherwise, it would be splashed all over the place. My decision was also colored by the effect my image had one on young girls. For days, I felt like the world was on my shoulders. I had never been so torn or as scared in my life. I know what really happens, and I'm not going to tell you. For days, I felt the world was on my shoulders. I had never been so torn or so scared in my life. I couldn't eat or sleep. My fuse was. I snapped at my mother and at my friends, all of whom thought my moods was related solely to the breakup with Rob. I still hadn't told anyone what was going on. It wasn't about to until I had reached a conclusion. Finally, I began to see things a bit more clearly. I eliminated the option, having a baby and putting it up for adoption. I had never wanted to be anything but a mother myself. I had been drawn to The first, from the time I was a little girl obsessed with my baby dolls. And I felt like a surrogate mother surrogate mom to Sarah when she was a baby. I always knew my ultimate role in life would be a mother. Furthermore, I wasn't about to repeat my birth mother's decision. I would never give up my own child. Never. It wasn't a question. It would never happen. How would I keep my pregnancy a secret in any way? The only way I could survive it would be to move to Outer Mongolia. Even then, no abortion was not and never would be an option. Wrong, Paula. I understood why it was for other people, just not me. This left me with two choices: being a young single mother or having an abortion. I researched both. Oh, sorry. Adoption. She would never do adoption. Put it up for adoption. It would be better than killing. This left me with two choices: being a young mother or having an abortion. I reached both subjects. I pressed the information. Rob, the only other person who knew, checked in on me. I gave him credit. He assured me that he would honor whatever decision I made and helped in whatever way I needed. I also prayed to God, to my Father, and to all the angels who might possibly hear my pleas to help me find a way. I would love to see that I did finally reach the conclusion, but I didn't need to. Oh no. I woke up one morning and began spotting. Scared, I finally told my mother what was going on, and she took me to my doctor. He did an ultrasound and told me that I was having a miscarriage. Went home in a daze and let nature take its course. I called Rob and told him what had happened. He seemed relieved, asshole. We made an attempt at a conversation, but it was so sad. My mom was amazed. She held me. She held me while I cried, brought me soup in bed, and stayed with me until I fell asleep. A couple of days later, I went back to the doctor with a fever. Things were not going well. Emergency DNC. It was done in doctor's office with a local anesthetic, and it was painful. Coupled with my broken heart, the whole experience was agony and gave me some very real and scary insight into what an abortion must be like. It was horrendous, but it was over. Yeah, she didn't have an abortion. She had a miscarriage, but to process and it wasn't coming out. So, in order for it to come out, they call it one, but she didn't. The baby was already gone. The baby was already dead in her. There was nothing left for me to do afterwards but go home and face reality. I had lost the baby and my relationship with Rob. Now I was so they didn't have to do that. It went on its own. Now I was completely, totally alone and hurt like hell. That's enough for now. 18. Wow. 14, 15, 16, 17. We read 4 chapters. Well. Yeah. But I thought that happened during. It's like weird. I thought it happened during. Well, she was on Little House on the Prairie. I could have sworn it was. Because I thought she said, "How am I going to hide it on the prairie? On Little House on the Prairie?" I could have sworn that. Man. Okay. Wow, I didn't think that he would just dump it like that. And he was happy that it happened? There was this one couple divorced, and well, I think separated was they signed the papers completely, but didn't bring him into the law yet. He was gonna bring it in the following Monday because it was a holiday weekend, and she found out she was pregnant, and they says, "Well, let's think this over because I don't want to divorce you, and the baby grew up with the parents divorced. Let's just give this a couple months thinking, and just rip up the divorce papers." And everything. She put it in the fireplace, and they both agreed to go to marriage counseling because they did not want. She did not want to have this baby without him. Yeah, Rob was nice. Yes. Oh, I want to punch him out right now. I'm the type of person, if I was Melissa back then, to have the baby. If the baby survived, have the baby and tell the tabloids, yeah, this is Rob Lowe's kid, and he denies him. That's just what I think of the wrong things to do. Don't ever do what I do. Do what you're supposed to do. Okay, guys, I am gonna go. Wow. No. I'm gonna wait a couple minutes because that'll make it an even 3 hours. Hmm. So, how do you like this? Oh, Paula, did you get, I don't know if you wanted to get caught up with the past days you missed. Okie dokie, Arnie, what are you making for supper? I think I'm macaroni and cheese to see if my brother wants some. I- I'll make a bunch of it. Brings back pain from me. I know, I was thinking of you during a few things on it. Because you're recovering as well. She is actually. Wait till you get further in this. I would like you to finish this off, though. Don't get scared and back away from it. I want you to hear what she does. She's a strong woman. Oh, yummy. No, no. That is. Oh, that's a potato. Okay. All right. I will see you guys later or tomorrow. Love, don't judge. Peace out. Good. Good, Paul. I'm glad you're a strong woman as well. And I'll see you next time. I love you, girl. Peace out.